Hey, what's up, guys? We're back. We're gonna do predictions for UFC Fresno, Cub Swanson versus Brian Ortega. But first, let's talk about that card last week, UFC 218 in Detroit. I mean, that was one of the best cards of the year right there. That was awesome. You know, there was some Fight of the Year candidates. Justin Gaethje versus Eddie Alvarez didn't disappoint. You know, Justin Gaethje was digging on those leg kicks, man, and Eddie was really hurt bad. You know, when he dropped to his guard and he was just on his back flailing, you know, trying to get him to come down. I was a little bit nervous for Eddie, man. I was thinking, is he going to get better? You know, is he about to get put out? And, you know, I bet on, I didn't bet, but we picked Gaethje here on our picks. So we lost that one, but I don't really care, man. I'm a fan of Eddie Alvarez, and that was awesome, man. That body work he was doing, his boxing just looked real crisp. And then another one that we lost was another war, man. Yancy Medeiros came up big. You know, he took out Alex Oliveira, and Oliveira looked good. He looked as good as he's been looking. He was landing those big knees to the body, those big front kicks. You know, he's really dangerous in my opinion. I think Oliveira is still one of the best prospects, you know, at 170. And, you know, Yancy took him out, and Yancy's won 3 in a row there too. So Yancy's someone that we got to start looking at. You know, Yancy needs to get a top 10 guy. You know, that was number 15. You know, you got to move him up, get him a top 10 opponent next, see what he could do. Because if you can't put that guy out cold, you know, he's gonna keep coming like it's nothing, man. And then you know, Francis Ngannou had one of the scariest knockouts I've ever seen. Literally, dude, it looked like Overeem's head was about to come off his shoulders. I was like, holy shit, motherfucker. Like, that was some crazy shit right there. I don't know, that dude, I mean, they're doing something to him at the UFC Performance Institute. I don't know what they're shooting him up with, but they're making him pretty damn good. And, you know, I don't know, man, he's a beast. You know, I'm not saying anything, but he's a beast. And, you know, he straight fucked up Alistair Overeem, so that was real rough to see. You know, I'm a fan of Alistair, but damn, that was bad. And then, you know, Max Holloway, he took out Jose Aldo again. And I don't know. I think it's time for Aldo maybe to move up to 155 pounds. The weight cut seems like it's getting real hard for him. He looked pretty bad at the weigh-in as well. I know it was short notice too, so you know that has something to do with it, I'm sure. But yeah, man, it looked exactly almost like the first fight, right? You know, he started off real good. He was looking good boxing, and Max slowly but surely, you know, started to feel his power and feel his power wane. And he even told Rogan after the first round, he just told him, this man's tired. You know, so you knew that he was in total control. And, you know, congrats to Max Holloway, man. He's one of the best in the world right now. You know, pound for pound, you got to put him up there. And so let's get started with the first fight for UFC Fight Night 123, and that's Antonio Braga Neto against Trevin Giles. And Neto's coming back after, you know, he had a long layoff. He's been off 3.5 years, so it's going to be interesting to see what he has. You know, he came to the States. He's been working with King's MMA. I know before he was working with Team Nogueira, so it is something new. You know, I don't know how long he's been doing that. I just saw a few pictures of him working at King's MMA, so you know, that could come to play. Maybe he has some better training partners. He's going to be doing a little better. But, you know, his striking has always been a means to an end. You know, his striking just isn't really good. He has a pretty nice leg kick, though. But other than that, you know, he has sloppy punches. And his whole thing is to shoot for double legs. And he's an elite jiu-jitsu player, man, especially when he can get your back. And you know, he likes to control on top, and especially in half guard. And he'll throw short punches until he feels he's confident to attack with submissions, you know. So he definitely likes to cement his top position before he attacks. And he had a nasty leg lock on Anthony Smith, man. He knee barred him, and he really hurt that leg. So you know, you got to be careful when you get on the ground with the guy. But he did, you know, get controlled on the ground by Clint Hester, and that was a real ugly fight. You know, I thought he deserved to win, but he just has a real obvious and slow stand-up, and it's just inactive, you know. And he circles with his back against the cage, and he just, I don't know. Hopefully he comes in with a lot better stand-up, with 3.5 years off. But apparently he's gotten a lot bigger, and he's been playing poker, and he gained 62 pounds to cut for this fight. So I don't know, man. And Trevin Giles looked pretty good, man. He had like a long, not a karate stance, but a real long stance. He had his hands low, and he was using a lot of movement. For a big physical middleweight like that, that's pretty rare. You don't usually see middleweights with that kind of movement. So it really was a pleasant surprise to see that for a UFC debuter. He looked pretty smooth on the feet, and he was composed and calm out there. And he used a lot of wrestling, and he liked to work from the opponent's guard, and he would land bombs in there. And that's something that I think he'll be able to do against Neto, especially if he stays in the guard, stays tight. I think that he definitely will be able to wear out Neto from his guard. And he actually has a pretty good job of getting the side control, kind of like a wrestling ride, and he'll land some big shots. And he has, some slams and, some pretty good cardio. And he looks much more athletic than Braga Neto. He has better stand-up. And I just think that this is a pretty easy fight for Trevin Giles. This is one of my more confident picks. I just think that he'll keep it standing, go for takedowns here and there, and I think that he'll be able to take him out with ground and pound in round 2. And on to the next fight, it's Chris Grutzmacher against Davi Ramos, and this is another fight that I'm very confident in. I'm going with Davi Ramos on this one. And Davi Ramos is real short and compact for 155. He fought up at 170 in his last fight against Sergio Moraes, and it wasn't really a great matchup for him to show his skills, man. He really is a solid wrestler, and he's a jiu-jitsu world champion. And against Sergio Moraes, who is another jiu-jitsu world champion, I think that he was a little weary of going for the takedowns. It also is at 170 pounds on short notice, so I'm sure the wrestling could probably, his cardio. So he didn't want to go for a lot of that, but he is, a little bit inactive on the feet, but he likes to come in with big combinations, and he'll throw counter, heavy hooks with counters, and he looks like he's a very powerful guy. And if he gets into the mat, obviously I think Grutzmacher is going to be in trouble. And Grutzmacher's, someone that likes to grind, but he went from the MMA lab to another gym where he was saying that he wanted to become more technical. And in my opinion, I just think that that's a terrible decision for a guy like him because his whole game was, grinding pressure, not that athletic, but he's going to break guys. And if he wants to be on the outside, trying to look pretty and trying to be technical, especially against a guy like Davi Ramos, I think he's going to get, definitely outspeeded, definitely, he's going to have less power, and I think he's going to be the worst athlete out there on the outside. The only way I think he could win this fight is if he makes it real ugly, makes Davi Ramos tired, and just avoids getting into the ground, but keeps it at short distance against the cage. And I just really don't see that happening, I just think that Ramos is going to be able to take his back, and I think he's going to choke out Grutzmacher. This is one of my more confident picks. I think it's going to happen early, too. I think it'll happen either late first round, early second, where he rocks him on the feet, follows him down, and takes his back and gets the rear naked choke there. And on to the last fight of the Fight Pass prelims, and it's Alejandro Perez against Yuri Alcantara. And this is an interesting fight. A couple years ago, Yuri would definitely be the sizable favorite, and now I'm sure he still is the sizable favorite, but it's much more tricky. A couple years ago, it'd be one of my most confident picks of the night. I'm going to pick Yuri, and Yuri's going to finish this guy. Yuri used to be awesome at finishing people that just were not on his level. He would just go out and finish them. But recently, Yuri's looking old, man. He's 37 years old now, and you have to wonder, those small guys definitely age a lot faster. And you just have to wonder when it's going to go for Yuri completely. He got real beat up against Luke Sanders, but he somehow, found the submission win with the leg lock. And that was a very impressive performance because he was getting beat up bad in that fight. And then in his follow-up performance against Brian Kelleher, he really got rocked, not put down, but rocked and shot for an instinctive takedown. And I think that's why he tapped so fast. I think he was hurt. And he just tapped because he was hurt, but Yuri's still very dangerous on the feet with his kicks and punches, but he's became much more much more just stand and bang, try to throw hard blows than he was before, where he was using his quickness and footwork and being on the outside. And I think that's part of him losing a little bit of athleticism as he gets older. But Perez is someone that's, I don't think he's the greatest fighter either. Perez is a Mexican fighter. He comes forward, stands in the pocket. He likes to throw heavy low kicks, and when he's at his best, he starts to get his head movement going, and he has fast hands, fast counters in the pocket. He'll slip and rip. But he leaves his chin up there high when he's entering to attack, and I think that's definitely something that Yuri could take advantage of and hurt him with. And he got dropped quite a few times, I think 3 times with the jab by Andre Sukumtat. So you have to wonder about his chin, and you have to wonder about when he comes in, Yuri catching him, Yuri still has great kicks, but, he did show great recoverability. Even though he fell, he was bouncing right back up, and he was showing, very limited effects about that. He was actually pushing, getting takedowns in that fight, and he stole the fight from Sukumtat, and a pretty rightful decision in my opinion. So he definitely is someone that'll attack with the single leg and double leg against the cage. He kind of tries to chain his takedowns together, and he has good cardio. He pushes the pace, and especially in the later rounds when he knows he needs to win. But I just think that Alcantara is just a little too talented for Alejandro Perez. I think he's going to be able to, style and finesse him on the feet, stay a little bit out of his range while staying in his range for his kicks, and I think he might be able to drop Perez and get a submission in the second round. So I'm going to go with Yuri to get another win in the UFC, and we'll see if he can keep it going. We'll see how much longer he can do it. But on to Frankie Saenz against Merab Dvalishvili. Hopefully I'm saying that right. I know he's trained with Matt Serra. And Frankie Saenz has been a long-time veteran in the UFC. He started off great, He was 3-0. Fought Uriah in a very close decision. He really pushed Uriah. He beat Yuri Alcantara, who we were just talking about. And he really was looking like a pretty good prospect. But he's lost 3 in a row now. And, he really needs this one to stay in his career in the UFC, because he's not like the most fun guy to watch. He's a grinder. So I think if he loses this one, he's definitely someone that the UFC could say goodbye to. And he's also 37 years old. So he's definitely going to come in with a lot of motivation to win here. But he's a wrestler, He uses cardio and pressure, and he tries to break you. He stays in your face. He has some big ground and pound. He came into the UFC with a real high striking rate. He would strike, I think, almost 5 strikes per minute. But his striking rate has gone down in his recent fights, and he has been a little more chinny. He got rocked and finished by Eddie Wineland, and I think that's probably why his output has slowed a little bit. And Merab is someone that looks like, from the footage that I saw, I didn't get to see much footage, but from the footage that I saw, he looks like he has an impressive striking game, and also he has some decent takedowns and decent ground and pound. And since he's training with Matt Serra and those guys, that he's going to have some pretty good jiu-jitsu, or at least knowledge on the ground to what positions are good, what positions are bad, And I saw him, he had a spinning back fist knockout. He had a great body kick knockout. And he seems like he rains down huge elbows from half guard. And he closes the distance really well. And he looks like he's real compact and strong for the division, and a good athlete. I think he's going to be the faster, quicker guy in this matchup. And I think he's just, on the upside of his career. And I like to look at guys that are on, high swings and low swings. And I think that this is just a low swing for Frankie Saenz. I think that Merab is going to be the more technical fighter on the feet. I think he's going to control the distance, and I think he's going to win a decision here. And I think, unfortunately, Frankie Saenz is going to, either have to go to Bellator or somewhere else. But he gave us a lot of good fights in the UFC. But on to Carl Jones de Tomas against Alex Perez. And this is another fight that I'm, pretty intrigued by. Alex Perez looks like he's a very good striker. On the Dana White Contender Series, he was really piecing up Kevin Gray on the feet. He had some real good fast combinations, and he actually had some good step-in knees as well, and knees in the clinch. Very hard hook to the body and to the head. He was going to the body a lot, and that was something that I like to see. You don't really see that a lot in MMA. And, he was opportunistic with the submission. His opponent went for a takedown after he was rocked, and he immediately jumped on the anaconda, and he got it. But 3 of 4 of Perez's last 4 losses are by submission, so that's something that you have to look at. Even though he did get that submission out there in his last fight, he is susceptible to getting submitted himself. But he looked like he was a very good prospect, And De Tomas, he weighed in 131 pounds in his first fight in the UFC. I know it was on short notice, but you have to wonder about this guy making weight. Who knows? We'll see. And he's pretty impressive. In that first round, he had some good counter hooks, a nice head kick, and he was able to land some slam takedowns, and he was showing ability to hold position and scramble. And he was fighting another very high-level prospect, And he showed a good wrestling base, but he did come out in round 2, and he had much less footwork. He was a little bit slower with the shots, both on the feet and with his takedown shots. And he didn't attack with as many takedowns, and he started to get out-hustled in the scrambles. He showed a lot of grit in submission defense. But he definitely tired a lot, and he's a young guy. I think that eventually he's going to be moving up to 35s, and I think that Perez is going to take him out here. I think Alex Perez is going to get the win by decision here, and that's one of my more confident picks of the night. But up next, we have Luke Sanders against Andre Sukumtat, and this is a great fight, Luke Sanders is a short, compact bantamweight. He's real strong, He fought at 145 in his first fight in the UFC against Maximo Blanco. He had a huge left hook that dropped him and then finished him with the rear naked choke. But he showed that he had huge power in that left hook, man. He literally took Blanco off his feet with that left hook. And he's a southpaw, so he has a real nice leg kick and a good body kick. And I think that's going to be vital in his fight with Andre. Andre is vulnerable to leg kicks. He got leg kicked a lot against Alejandro Perez. And, I think that that's something that Luke Sanders needs to look to do. But Luke Sanders is also powerful on top. When he gets on top, he unloads with, huge ground and pound. And he definitely is a finisher. He has fight-ending intentions. And he did a good job of controlling, Yuri Alcantara. He had him in the wrestling ride position. He was landing some big shots, but he got leg locked, he got caught, and I think that that's going to give him a lot of motivation. I think both guys actually are going to have a lot of motivation here in this fight because both guys kind of had raw deals in their last fight. Andre Sukumtat is a guy who's a slick striker, man. He had a great jab, and he caught Alejandro Perez a bunch of times coming in with the jab, and rocked him, dropped him 3 times with it. He has a nice straight right hand. He's a counterpuncher, so it does get a little bit slow on the feet if his opponent isn't coming to him. He's a bit low volume, and it gets him in trouble, Sometimes he'll come in with explosive uppercuts, explosive, combinations, and they look like he should do it more often because he looks like if he does that, he could be very dangerous, but he just doesn't like to put himself in those positions. And due to that, I think it's going to come down to him in his career being a lot of close decisions, and I think that he coasted in his last fight, and you could tell that at the decision he was just devastated that he lost, and you could tell that he knew that he thought that he won, but he knew that he gave it away, and I think that this fight he's going to try to come in and put it all out there. It's on short notice, so he doesn't have as much to lose. And, is he going to be able to stop that takedown? That's going to be the big thing. And I think this is a great fight, and Andre with the new attitude, if he comes in and fights hard, he pushes the pace and actually has a high volume with striking rate, I think he could win the fight. But, with the limited training camp and Luke Sanders coming in, I think he's going to be a little bit more tentative after he gets hit a couple times, and I think Luke Sanders is going to be able to win a decision here, but this is a great fight. That's a very competitive fight. And up next, we have, one of my least favorite fights of the card. It's a rematch with Liz Carmouche and Alexis Davis, and this is just a terrible fight. Alexis Davis, she's gotten worse, in my opinion, as in the last couple of years, and maybe Liz has gotten a little bit better, but Liz's striking is still very, very one-dimensional. She doesn't really use it very often. Like against Chukagian, she was throwing the leg kick like she did against Davis, circling, and would go in and get her takedowns. But in the first fight when she fought Alexis Davis, she did not want to go down in the guard with Alexis Davis. And Alexis Davis is dangerous on the ground. Against Sarah McMahon, she really hurt Sarah McMahon's face with big elbows, and she was dominating from bottom in her guard. And she has a submission victory over Sarah Kaufman in the UFC. She has quite a few submissions. She's a black belt. She showed pretty good jiu-jitsu in her last fight against Cindy Dandois as well. And I just think that she has a little bit more variety on the feet. Her striking is gotten worse in my opinion. I think her hands and legs, don't retract as fast. Her hand speed's much slower. Her kicks are much slower than they used to be a couple years ago. But I think she still has more variety on the feet. And I think she's going to be able to do the same thing, man. I think she's going to be able to win a stand-up battle because Liz Carmouche doesn't want to go to the ground. And I think it's going to be a terrible, boring fight. I think she's going to be landing leg kicks and circling around. And I think Carmouche is going to be backing up, circling, and trying. I don't even know if she'll try to go for the takedown. If she does go for the takedowns, though, I don't know. I think if she goes for the takedown, she always has her, like against Chukagian, she would have her hands down on the mat in guard. And that's just something that is just basic mistakes. Alexis Davis would take that arm home with her. And, that's why I just don't think that even if she does get to the ground, I'm more confident in Alexis Davis getting a submission than Liz Carmouche holding it down on the ground. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Alexis Davis, and I'm going to say it's going to be by decision here, but that's a terrible fight. But up next, we have a great fight, so Benito Lopez against Albert Morales, and Benito Lopez is another guy who was on the Dana White Contender Series. You're starting to see a lot of these guys start to fight now, but Benito Lopez is a young guy. He's still very green, He doesn't have strong wrestling, but he used to be primarily a grappler in his fights, and now he's starting to be more of a striker. He's more opening up with real wild strikes. A lot of jumpy knees, just a lot of jumpy knees, and he'll attack with wild submissions too, like flying guillotines, and when you take him down, he attacks with a lot of submissions as well, but he doesn't set him up that great, so his guard can get past the side control. But he is tall and long, so those legs are hard to deal with on the ground. And, his striking is very wild, but it can be predictable. He throws the flying knee a lot, and he throws a lot of front kicks to the body. But then he'll switch it up, throw a switch kick to the head, but he also gets controlled against the fence a lot. And I actually thought he lost that fight against Steven Peterson. I went and rewatched it, and I thought Peterson took the second and third round. Lopez seemed to gas, and Lopez is just still a little bit too green. I think Albert Morales is just a little bit better. He's another long bantamweight that likes to mix it up. He's a good striker, long punches. He actually had a pretty good performance against Thomas Almeida. He was able to eat some, big shots, come back and land some big shots of his own. And he has a good chin. He got finished with a body shot in that fight. But he has great recoverability as well. He was hurt in that fight against Almeida, and he actually went for a single leg, got the single leg, transitioned to the back right after he was dropped, so that he has great cardio, great recoverability, and he has a great job of taking the back, and Benito Lopez gives up his back as well. And I just think he's the more composed fighter after round one. I think maybe round one will be a bit of a war. Maybe Benito will put Albert in a bit of trouble. But I think after that, I think Albert Morales is going to be burning time against the fence. I think he's going to be able to take Benito down. And I think he's going to be able to win a decision here. And I think it's going to be a good fight. And up next, you have Eric Anders against Marcus Perez. And, this is a sick fight. Eric Anders is someone that you really have to keep your eye on. Because up at those higher weight classes, 185, 205, the heavyweight, the athletes up there, the better the athlete, the better you could rise faster, just because the level of athlete isn't there. And Eric Anders is the highest of the high-level athletes. He went to Alabama, was a starting linebacker, and he's just coming into the MMA, man, and he's just knocking people out cold. He's won 9 in a row, his 9-0 to start his career, and he's fighting another guy that's 9-0. And, I watched Perez, and he's an intriguing guy too, but he seems like more of a point fighter. He uses a lot of feints and fakes, moves his hands, tries to give you a lot of looks, and he'll throw kicks to the legs, kicks to the body, and occasionally he'll go high. And he's just looking for his openings to counterpunch, but he stands flat-footed right in front of you. And that's just troubling, man. I think with someone like Eric Anders, who's just an explosive athlete, you stand right in front of him like that, you're just, waiting to get countered or waiting to get blitzed and knocked out, and that's something that I don't think he's going to want to do, just stand right in front of him. And, he does have good submissions, on the ground. You can't take him lightly. But he doesn't have good wrestling skills, and he gets taken down a lot of the time. But he is active looking for submissions. And he had a big upset against Ian Heinisch in his fight for LFA title. He got an arm triangle win. But I watched his fight against Paulo Thiago, who's a 170er. And he was hit with a lot of shots. And it was actually bullshit, man. I was watching, and Thiago rocks him. And the ref stops the fight for someone to come in to mop up a wet spot on the floor right after he rocks him. It was like terrible timing. I was like, wow, it was just a little bit peculiar. But then, Perez was actually taken down and controlled in the 5th round and another round in that fight. It was a competitive fight, and he looked to gas a little bit. And, Eric Anders is just someone that puts a lot of pressure on you. He'll land straight punches extremely fast, closes the distance, just so explosive. And his left hand just has massive power, and he could KO with one punch, Great takedown defense, vicious ground and pound. And he actually started in jiu-jitsu, so he definitely has pretty decent jiu-jitsu as well. And I just think he's going to be too much of an athlete for Perez. Like I said, Perez likes to stand in front of you. He's a little bit too flat-footed. And I think he's going to get knocked out cold in that first round. I think Eric Anders is going to keep it going, get another first-round knockout. Up next is Darrell Horcher against Scott Holtzman. And this is an interesting fight. Scott Holtzman is a good athlete, strong, explosive. He uses a lot of, stutter steps, false starts, a lot of feints to try to get you not knowing when he's going to explode and come in with his combinations. And he actually does a good job of hiding his combinations with takedown attempts. So he'll come in, fake a takedown attempt, throw an overhand right to a left hand, and then he'll actually go for the takedown, get the takedown. So he does a good job of that, And he has hard punches, and he'll start to land those shots and, get out before you have a chance to counter. He has fast hands, pretty explosive guy, fast in and out movements. And he has some nice heavy leg kicks. He hurt his last fight, McBride. He hurt him with his leg kicks in that fight. And he has a good chin as well. He showed that against Josh Emmett. He took some bombs and was just walking forward, telling him, give me some more, baby. So he definitely is in it for the brawl. And he gets caught with punches when he's up against the cage, though, and that's something that he can't do. And he can get countered coming in. But I think he's going to be the much better, much quicker athlete here. I think he's going to be able to get singles and doubles against the cage. And I think he's going to be able to land big ground and pound when he gets on top, And Darrell Horcher is someone that's has big, big power in his hands, good straight punches and hooks. But he rarely throws kicks, man, and he was just in a terrible accident where it really screwed up his leg. And I don't know if that's why, but he doesn't have very good velocity on his leg kick. Like when he throws it, it's almost like I don't know, it's just like he's throwing it just to give you something to think about, but it's nothing, And he actually has some decent top control on the ground, but his top control doesn't lead to dangerous attempts. He doesn't have a dangerous ground and pound, dangerous submission game. But he does do a decent job of dirty boxing in the clinch, but I just think that Holtzman is a lot better athlete. I think Holtzman will be a little bit more better with footwork while Horcher walks forward a little bit plotty, and I think he'll be hit with overhand rights and leg kicks all day. I think he's going to be beat pretty easily. I don't think he's going to get finished, but I think Holtzman will win an easy decision there. I think that's going to be an easy fight for him. But up next we have Aljo Sterling against Marlon Moraes, and this is probably one of the most competitive fights on the card, and one of the best fights on the card. And I was really impressed with Aljo's fight in his last fight against Henan Brown, man. He was much better on the feet, extremely composed, wasn't as nervous on the feet, trying to get it to the ground so quickly. And he threw his hands a lot more. He was throwing his hands and getting out of the way, and he seems like he's a bit open to be countered with his hands. But the thing is, he's so quick and fast that he's almost like able to, use movement to get out of the way, and he's just real fast. And he did his usual thing, landed a lot of leg kicks, landed a lot of kicks from the outside, and he landed a nice front kick to the face against Brow. But, his bread and butter, man, is still that jiu-jitsu, and he showed it off really well in that last fight, man. His back control is just incredible. His back control, especially in that first round, it looked like Brow was going to be able to turn into his guard, and nope. He was able to get it back, and he had controlled the back the whole round. And he actually had a nice, step in up elbow. It looked real John Jones-ish, and he's gonna be a tough out for anyone. He has great cardio, great grinding against the cage, and Marlon's a guy that he has his great kicks, great kick to the body where he slips back, and Marlon's very well rounded, but he just had a fight with John Dodson where he got rocked. He got dropped in that fight. He's very fast too. He has some nice combinations, and with his hands, he almost pot shots you from the outside. I think he's going to be the bigger guy as well, but Marlon isn't going to have the reach, and I think Aljo's going to be able to land those kicks. I think he's going to be able to close the distance, and I think he's improving in every fight. He really impressed me in that last fight, and I think he's going to beat Moraes. I think he's going to win a unanimous decision here. And up next, you have Jason Knight against Gabriel Benitez. And this is another fight that I think Jason Knight should win pretty easily. I'm just not very impressed with Benitez. Benitez's only impressive thing about his game is his left kick, man, and his left straight punch. He has a great left kick, a left straight punch, but he doesn't really use any of his right-handed or right leg techniques, and his takedown defense is just very questionable. He has a great guillotine as well, and he's decent off of his back, but he isn't as active getting up, And, or actually, he's very active getting up. He actually got up a lot in his last fight. I'm sorry. But he's just, I don't know. He just gets up and he's just not very active on the feet. He has good cardio. But I just think Jason Knight is going to be able to push him back. I think Benitez backs up against the fence way too much. I think Knight's going to be able to push him back. I think he's going to be able to get in his face, land punching combinations, get out of kicking range, take him down, control him on the ground. And, I think he's really going to beat him up. I think Jason Knight's great at taking the back, and I know he lost his last fight, but I think he's going to be able to take the back of Benitez and get a rear naked choke, and I'm pretty confident in that here because I'm just not impressed with Gabriel Benitez. Like I said, it seems like all he has is that kick and a guillotine. But up next is the main event, and I've been going back and forth on this one, man, but I'm going to go with Cub Swanson. Cub Swanson is the better striker, and I think he should be able to land and not get hit. Ortega's someone that doesn't win rounds very much, and he leaves his fights, up to that third round and makes himself need a finish, and he's been getting that finish lately. He's been really, capitalizing that third round, and but that's eventually you're gonna run out of luck with that. Eventually you're not gonna be able to finish someone, and Cub's tough to finish, man. The only guys that Cubs lost to since 2011 is Max Holloway and Frankie Edgar. Other than that, he hasn't lost. He lost to Jose Aldo. He's only lost to the cream of the crop, man. And I just think Cub Swanson's going to be able to win a unanimous decision. I think it's going to be 50-45. I think he's going to feel jibbed, that he didn't get the title shot. This is the last fight on his deal. And I think he's going to want to, come out there, make a statement, prove a point. He's not done. He's ready to go, and he wants his title shot. He wants to stay, and he wants to get paid. And I think that's exactly what he's going to do. And I'm going to go with Cub Swanson here. But, all right, guys, I forgot to say earlier, we were 9-4 last week on our picks. So that was another pretty solid week. And let's hope we can keep it going here. I hope you guys like the show. Just subscribe. I'm going to be doing the card again next week, probably next Wednesday again. So, like I said, I hope you like the show. Subscribe for more.